Street. You can also view us on the Impact Network, or you can hear us on 1690 AM WVON, or you can follow us on Facebook Live, Instagram, Periscope, or Twitter. We are so appreciative to all of you who have tuned in to us today from all around this globe. We especially are grateful for those of you who are tuning in from our satellite cities of Detroit, New York, Washington, D.C., Silicon Valley, and Chicago and Atlanta. We are continuing our celebration of International Women's History Month. And we are extra excited today to be sending all of our children on a HBCU tour. They will be going all across the South, visiting various schools, talking to members of the Panhandle, getting accepted into programs. We are proud of the work that we do to prepare our future. We have an excellent program in store. You don't want to miss. Stay tuned. The push is on. The push is on. Don't turn that down. The push is on.
Yes, I am somebody. At the end of this day, you can try to walk away, but I am somebody. Oh, I am somebody. Yes, I am. Yeah. You can try to walk away, but at the end of this day, I am. Yeah. I am somebody. Yeah, I am.
Say, I am somebody. I am somebody. I am a Zeta. Respect me. Protect me. Never neglect me. I am somebody. My mind is a pearl. I can learn anything in the world if my mind can conceive it and my heart can believe it. I know I can achieve it. I am God's child. My child is going to college. Put your hand together. Say, my child is going to college. Let me hear you scream. Say, I am somebody. Go, Mayhan.
You can try to walk away. At the end of this day, I am somebody. Say when I say I am somebody. Oh, I am. Hey, maybe down and pushed away. At the end of this day, I am somebody.
Say, don't shoot. Vote. Hands up. Don't shoot. Vote. Don't shoot. Vote. Give our children who are marching around the world a big hand there as they fight violence. With my mind. We've done so much. Before let them sit up on the stage for a minute. Let them sit up here for a minute, Jeanette. Let them sit up here for a minute, please. Right back up here. These youth are getting ready to go on. They're going to they're going to Louisville, Kentucky tonight. Mount Zion Baptist Church in White Creek, Tennessee. They're going Monday to Tuskegee University, Alabama State, Dex Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Equal Justice Initiative in Montgomery, Honda Motor Manufacturing in Montgomery, Stillman College in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, Miles College in Fairfield, Alabama. Isn't this wonderful? Talladega, Alabama, 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Toyota Manufacturing in Huntsville, Alabama, Rose College in Holland Springs, Mississippi, Christ Missionary Baptist Church, National Civil Rights Museum in Memphis, and back home next Saturday. Give them a big hand. Real big hand. So don't shoot, vote. Don't shoot, vote. I want to, before I finish this, this past week we had our election in Chicago. Some big victories, and we congratulate President of the Cook County Board, Pratt Winkle. Give her a big hand. Pratt Winkle, she won a great victory. She should be president of the Cook County Board. Next president of Cook County Board. A big hand for Pratt Winkle. Give her a hand. From 6 to 6, we had people here at Rainbow Push volunteering this past week. I want to honor them just briefly, who worked here 12 hours, we're really 14 hours all day, handling calls, people were having problems. Yvonne Amos, give her a big hand, Yvonne Amos. Daisy Camps, Willie Dukes, Pamela Davis, Joanne Jennings, Adrian McKay, the LaPlause Moore, Omar Sharif, Mary Tribune, Dorothy Williams, retired Judge Bernetta Bush, Attorney Lou Myers, Attorney Harriet Parker. Give them a big hand, please, a big hand. We thank you for your work. You meant so much, and their godmother, the mother of all of them, give Betty Magnus a big hand. Give them a big. Our youth are marching around the nation today and around the world on the issue of violence. It's like we've been making this case for a long time, and it finally came home after we've lost 166 children in Chicago under age 17 the last 3 years. 166 under age 17 in Chicago alone. So stop the violence. Save the children. And assault weapons and have more background checks. So we must change gun law, but also change our minds about guns. We must change gun law, but also change our minds about guns. We have there are 4 million high school seniors eligible to register and vote this year. If those 4 million seniors do register and do vote, they can have a new America by November of this year. There are 4 million blacks in the South yet unregistered, and 2.5 million who are registered who did not vote. So 4 million blacks in the South still unregistered. 4 million high school seniors eligible to register and vote now. 2.5 million registered who didn't vote. When we vote in big numbers, victory comes our way. We don't vote, we get trumped. Now put your hands together if that makes sense. Before Benita comes, I want my Zeta, send up Zeta. Zeta sister. Give them a big hand. Come on up, come up. Our sisters from Zeta Phi Beta sorority. And give them a big hand. Won't you do it? I'm sure that Benita will deal with the list, but Sister Rhonda Lewis, the wife of Brother Reverend Tommy Lewis from Birmingham, Reverend Tommy Lewis' wife, Rhonda, made her transition. So we dedicate our broadcast today to Rhonda Lewis, the wife of Reverend Tommy Lewis in Birmingham, Alabama. That family means so much. They're one of our founding families of our organization. And for Tommy, who means so much, we prayed every day this week. We went to visit Rhonda in the hospital 2 weeks ago. Give a big hand for Rhonda Lewis for her life and living. A big hand for Rhonda Lewis. 4 million blacks in the South. Our fate is in our hands. 4 million in the South. 2.5 million registered who did not vote. 4 million high schools. All those in jail who are not yet in prison. Those who have not yet been sentenced, who are not yet felons. So all those in jail on pretrial detention have the right to register and vote. If we vote, we can reduce tuition. If we vote, we can get affordable health care. If we vote, we have the power to change America. Put your hands together if that makes sense to you. Now, Zetas, y'all want to say something, make some kind of some? Come right on.
Good morning, everyone. I am Loretta Young Wright with Zeta Tau Zeta chapter of Zeta Phi Beta sorority. And I'm joined by my sisters here today, and we have other family members here, Sigmas and our friends, the Amici. Would you please stand? Want to just say thank you to Reverend for all that he has done. Thank you for the distinguished guest here today. I had the opportunity to meet Queen Mother, who says she's 97 and still working in the prison, so I'm humbled by that. You know, one of our great writers, Alice Walker, she searched for and found the gravesite of Zora Neale Hurston, who had been forgotten and was buried with no headstone. She found her, and she said, after the work she did to put that headstone on her grave, she said, a people, and she was considering all of us in the diaspora, but a people should not forget their geniuses. And we have not forgotten the commitment, the sacrifice, the wonderful things that Reverend Jackson has done for us. And so we're here today to honor him and just to say thank you from the bottom of our hearts for all that you have done and that you continue to do. It's our pleasure, Reverend. This is our Wakanda, and he's our very own Black Panther.
Bonita Parker.
Thank you, Reverend. Let's give it up again for the Zetas. Thank you so much for recognizing our leader. This year, he's been recognized almost every other day, it seems like. We love you, Reverend. We so appreciate all that you've meant to humanity, all that you've meant to the world, all that you mean for the upward mobility of us as a people. We love you for that, and we appreciate it. We're so excited about so many of our friends that made their elections and won their elections. We just want to give a special shout out to a close friend of ours, Judge Coleman. Let's give it up for Judge Coleman. Congratulations. We also want to dedicate this broadcast to actually two of our staff members. Axel Adams lost his sister, Cynthia Stewart. Axel, we love you. We are praying for you and your entire family. And also Tracy Pittman on the death of her brother, Larry D. Randall Sr. Tracy, you are in our prayers as well. We also want to keep in our prayers Queen Latifah on the passing of her mother, Rita Owens, and Great Mills High School in Maryland as they were victims. They were students and family members that were victims of another crazy shooting. And then we also, Stephon Clark, a young man in Sacramento, California, who was killed. We've got to keep the pressure on this gun violence. We have to, we have to. The next person I would like to introduce is a wonderful young man whose resume far outseeds people of my generation. He's accomplished so much. We're so proud of him, and we're happy to see him this morning. Won't you join me in giving a warm welcome to Zion Jenkins, who is a junior at Calumet Christian School.
Morning, Rainbow Push. Today, I will be giving you a brief excerpt of Dissertation on Man by Marcus Garvey. Man is the individual who is able to shape his own character, master his own will, and direct his own life. When God breathed into the nostrils of man the breath of life, made him a living soul, and bestowed upon him the authority of Lord of creation. He never intended that that individual should descend to the level of a peon, a serf, or a slave, but that he should always be man in the fullest possession of his senses and with the truest knowledge of himself. But how changed has man become since creation? We find him today divided into different classes: the helpless imbecile, the dependent slave, the servant, the master. These different classes, God never created. he created man. But this individual has so retrograded as to make it impossible to find him, a real man. As far as the Negro race is concerned, we can find but few real men to measure up to the higher purpose of the creation because of his lack of manhood in the race. We have stagnated for centuries and now find ourselves at the foot of the great human ladder. After the creation and after man was given possession over the world, the Creator relinquished all authority to his Lord except that which was spiritual. All that authority, which meant the regulation of human affairs, human society, and human happiness, was given to man by the Creator, and therefore, man had become master of his own destiny. Without further ado, I would like to introduce a man of God, a true hero, Reverend Jesse L. Jackson, Sr.
Say, I am somebody. I am somebody. Red and yellow, brown, black, and white. We're all precious in God's sight. Everybody is somebody. Stop the violence. Save the children. Hands up. Vote. Don't shoot. Hands up. Don't shoot. Vote. Don't shoot. Vote. My vote will make a difference. Put your hands together one more time. So I prepare to bring on Sister Dr. Jeanette Wilson and our special guest today are focused on education. I want to say to you today that we have with us this mission of education of our people. And we're going to do that just today. We have 3 outstanding educators who have been on the panel today. And please hear what they have to say. Reverend Dr. Jeanette Wilson, give a big hand, please.
Thank you, Reverend Jackson. Give Reverend Jackson a round of applause. He's the only man I know that works 24/7, 366 days a year. Give him another round of applause. Fighting for social justice, 50 consecutive years. I am excited about this particular panel. It is as we prepare to go through the last week of Women's History Month, it is important that we recognize our educators who are functioning today, as we often spend a lot of time talking about women who left a legacy for us. We think about, most of us talk about Sojourner Truth and Fannie Lou Hamer, and then we think about Mary McLeod Bethune, who could build a college in the midst of segregation, in the midst of extreme racism. We have some young women with us today who are standing on the shoulders of those women who are making new roads. And so we have my board member, Dr. Donna Leak, who is a superintendent in the southern suburbs, and she has been on the cutting edge of making change outside of the city of Chicago, helping us nationally and locally to understand some of the educational challenges we face. And then seated next to her, give her a round of applause. And she's a member of the Leak family. Now, when you look at her, you think you're looking at Henrietta Leak. And then next to her, we have Dr. Representing Whitney Young, principal of Whitney Young, Joyce Kenner, Whitney Young High School. This is the high school where 4 students received a perfect score. 5 students received a perfect score on the ACT. And then seated next to Dr. Kenner, we have a young woman who is going to really give us some insight from a millennial perspective, Erica Linton. She's a dean of students at Laura Ward's STEM school. And you know, we do a lot of focus here on science, technology, engineering, and math. So the first question that we want to ask each of you to address, students are marching around the world. as a district superintendent, as a principal, and then as a dean of students, what do you all see, how do you see this march impacting education as we know it today? 50 years after the Kerner Commission report, 64 years after Brown versus the Board of Education.
Well, the first thing I want to do is acknowledge that this march that's happening today is generated by young people who stood up and said enough is enough, and looked at the adults around them and said, if you can't do it, we will. So I really applaud them for that, and I applaud our young people here today. This is very similar to the march that happened in 1963. If you remember in Birmingham, Alabama on May 2nd, the Children's Crusade, that Children's March changed what happened in Birmingham. Within 2 months, those segregation laws were removed. Now, it took us a long time to get past the scars and the impact of it, but it changed the course of our nation. And I believe this. I am a superintendent of schools, and our young people participated in the walkout. Right now we have students in my school district writing letters to Congress. There's a change in the atmosphere that says enough is enough. And if we can't get it as adults, if our intentional adult actions don't make that impact, then it moves to our children. So I want to say, I think that we will see some major impact in terms of what happens in Congress and what happens in our states and our local governments that impacts education.
I know that many of you who are over 50 remember perhaps watching the students, the young people in Birmingham, as they turned those water hoses on the young people demonstrating. When they took the young people to jail, it sent a message to the heart of America, and it really began to change how people felt about the indignities that African Americans suffered. Dr. Kenner?
I just want to let the young people know 35 years ago, I started my career here at Operation Push as the Deputy Director of Education. And it's just an honor for me to be here today to look at still what is important to our youth, what should be important to our youth, and continue this movement. As a principal, I have embraced and will continue to embrace students having a voice. I learned to have a voice by being affiliated with Operation Push, and I think it's very important. And I told my students last week when we had over 2,000 students to march outside of the building, quiet for 17 minutes, 2,000 students. School supported them. I allowed them to march because I thought it was important for them to do that. We have a number of students from Whitney Young and our surrounding schools that are marching in Washington today because it is important. And you young people, you guys, you need to have a voice. You need to make it strong. It needs to be collective. And it doesn't need to be about, really, it needs to be about all people. And us doing the right thing to benefit young people and to benefit everyone. So I would like to say to all of you, as a principal of a high school, I've been there 23 years, I provided a voice for students. Take back what rightfully belongs to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Erica?
I think it's already been said, but as a dean of students at an elementary school, it's my job to promote conversation. So a lot of things that's going on in the world, my babies don't really understand it. And I encourage parents to have those healthy conversations. I was a beneficiary of healthy conversations because I grew up in a household that talked about what was going on. I remember tons of times me and my sister, for Dr. King's holiday, we wouldn't just be sitting at home not doing anything. We were watching movies, from Our Friend Martin to watching movies of what came on and going to museums and things of that nature. So I just encourage my students, and I talk to them about what's going on in the world. How are you feeling about what's going on in the world? What is this image? What does this mean to you? And just promote healthy conversation and community.
Well, I think one of the things that Reverend Jackson often challenges us is to not just demonstrate, but to really look at what is our point? What is the public policy that we want to advance, or what do we want to change to make things better? Now, in Chicago public schools, we have metal detectors, right? In all of our schools. Do you have metal detectors in your school?
No, we do not have metal detectors.
So now, what is it that you think, what legislation At Rainbow Push, we're pushing for a ban, a complete ban on the assault weapons. We know that you don't use assault weapons, military-style weapons for hunting. You don't need them for a skeet shooting. They are used to kill, and now individuals have complete access to them. How are you going to make sure that your students are more secure today than they would have been had these students not taken to the streets? Had Sandy Hook not happened, had Florida not happened?
Well, the reality is the young people are saying today, they are known as the shooting generation, which is very sad for our young people to have deemed themselves a generation that we know somebody who's been shot and killed, who is a friend. So in our school district, and really I think what's happening across the state is there is more emphasis on the security and safety of our buildings. So you can talk about legislation and legislation to stop assault weapons, but in Chicago, a lot of it is handguns. So there's no legislation about handguns. So if you think about what we really need to focus on is a couple of things. One is making sure that there's legislation that restricts who gets a handgun, when you get a handgun, how long you have it, in addition to the assault weapons. But the reality too is we need our mental facilities open back up. We need money, we need legislation that, because the people who are coming in and doing these kinds of heinous crimes, there's mental issues underlying that. So in school districts, one of the things that we've been doing is incorporating more counselors, more psychologists, more people to help our young people so that they don't get to that stage. But our legislators need to step to the plate and provide those services again across the community.
Well, you know, in the state of Illinois, the first thing that Governor Rauner cut were the mental health facilities. He cut all support for schools with respect to crisis intervention and mental health counseling and social services. And you could speak to that, Dr. Kenner.
I was really, though, thinking about the metal detectors in schools. I don't think metal detectors are going to stop any shooting. I think as principals and educators in schools, we need to get to the students to talk to them about really what is right and wrong. And I think if you looked at all of the shootings across the country, it stemmed from bullying. And I think if the country comes out with a very strong policy on zero tolerance for bullying from students, I think that we have a chance to make a change. At Whitney Young, every Monday morning, I get on the PA to say, let's be nice to someone. And if there's any issues, we bring everybody down to my office. Civilly, we sit down and talk about the issues. And then I say to the students, if it happens again, you cannot stay. And so we're trying to provide a culture or establish a culture at Whitney Young to make sure that students are heard, understood, but they are definitely not bullied.
Thank you.
I agree with everything that's been said before me, but as Dr. Kenner said, it costs nothing to be kind. So one of the things that I promote across the board with my school is, like you, no bullying, anti-bullying. I don't stand for it. But it goes back to conversation. Because I am a millennial, I do understand conversations really get to the root of the matter. They get to the heart of the issue. And if you are talking to individuals about what's going on, especially in the community, I take assault weapons on the daily. And so when you really get to the root of, I had a conversation with a student yesterday, and he brought in a weapon, and my question was, who in this school is bothering you? And it was that no one was bothering him. He said, I need this to protect myself as I'm walking to school. So then my thing is, so if I'm making sure that my building is safe, as much as I can make sure that it's safe with 468 students, pre-K through 8th, then now I'm saying, okay, to keep this from going to my building, I'm gonna walk you home. How can I make sure that I walk you home to keep this from happening? You know, so that's one of the major issues that we're going on, especially in my neighborhood. I'm in West Humboldt Park. So there are a lot of different things that uncover as you begin to talk to the children.
Well, I think as we look at the issue of gun violence, we look at the issue of inadequate funding, which we're going to talk about in our schools. That's one of the agenda items. We just had a primary election. Candidates for state rep, candidates for state senate, candidates for U.S. Congress. How then are you preparing your students beyond the marches to register those who will turn 18 by November? What are you doing in your schools, or what can we do in school districts across this country? Students are marching today. What are we going to do to increase voter registration and increase voter turnout? In this primary, the older people, 65 and older, were the highest people who voted early and voted at all. And the next group was the 50 to 65. The millennials did not turn out. So what are we going to do between now and November to increase voter turnout, voter registration?
Well, we have about 500 seniors in our building, and what we decided to do was to bring Vic Mensa, who is a graduate of Whitney Young, to come and talk to our students about voter registration. And we were able to register almost half of those voting age seniors to vote. And so I just think that if we, well, thanks. But if we bring somebody who the students can connect with, they understand their language, then I think we perhaps have a better chance of getting the vote out for these young people.
I just want to also compliment PUSH because my previous, I'm superintendent now at a pre-K through 8. Previously, I was a high school superintendent. And PUSH actually came out every year I was a superintendent and registered our kids to vote. And Reverend Jackson himself came out, and it was, I mean, it was overwhelming to see the young people. So what ended up happening was our students not only registered themselves, our seniors, but they got their parents to come and register as well. So it was a community effort, and we can make that happen. That's not hard to do.
So I know you work with principals, you work with school boards, you work with other principals and other district superintendents. We need a national movement, starting in the state, the Midwest, and then go national, to make sure that every principal, every high school principal, but every principal pushes voter registration of their students and parents and staff, and then turnout, because most of our school buildings are sites for voting.
I think our new superintendent, Dr. Janice Jackson, has been doing that with the 82 high schools that we have within our district. So we are making a difference here in Chicago with that push to have our students to be registered to vote.
Just to speak on the question that you said, from the pre-K through 8th level, I make sure that they know that they're change agents. What you speak, you're able to manifest. So if you sow a man thinketh, so is he. And so for me, it's just putting them in a position, if I believe this, I really believe that I can be the next president of the United States. If I really believe that I can do what it is I need to do to shift an atmosphere or an ideal of what needs to be happening in the world, then I want to be the one that plants the seed, because oftentimes in conversation with my students, I'm noticing that their parents are not planting positive and prosperity seeds in their children's lives, and it's no fault of their own. They don't have it within. They give what they have, and so they don't have it in them to give that. So once they come to school on the school level, I make sure even daily I greet all my students with a hug. Sometimes that's the first hug that they're getting.
Now, there are a lot of educational issues. We have candidates who won the primary. We're pushing towards the general. What is the primary educational, what 3 things do we want our elected officials to implement if they want our vote?
The first thing that we need here in the state of Illinois is a fair funding method, which they have passed this evidence-based model for funding, which is actually research-based. It says these are the 20 things that you need in order for schools to be successful and for children to achieve. Well, the money's been set aside, but it hasn't been dispersed to schools, and it's almost April. The money was set aside in July. So that's the first thing, is move on this equitable funding. That's first. Secondly, the other thing that needs to happen is they have to stop with what we call unfunded mandates. What we hear from legislators is, you have to do this, this, and this, but we won't give you money to do it. They have to stop. And then the third thing is to let educators educate our kids. Stop legislating us to death and let us let us educate. Those are my 3 big priorities. The funding, though, that's my number 1. I've been fighting for that for 2.5 years now. That's number 1, is get the funding right. And in that funding, the lottery money that was supposed to come to schools, remember that? It wasn't supposed to, it was supposed to be additional funds. It wasn't supposed to be, you keep this money and give us the lottery money in exchange. And now they're giving money through the new funding model, but they're talking about moving the teacher pension shift. So just think about this. They're saying we're gonna give you $350 million, but you have to pay us back $490 million in pension. So those are my priorities. It doesn't add up.
Doesn't add up.
No.
Dr. Kenner?
My first one would be, and this is personal, any time I go to the polls to vote for any candidate, if they're not about stricter gun control, then they're not getting my vote. Because I personally think it's ridiculous to say that they're going to arm principals. You know, we really laugh about me having a gun strapped to my thigh. What am I going to do? I'm not trained to carry a gun nor to use a gun. I'm trained to educate students, and that's what I want to do on a daily basis. Obviously, the second thing, as she mentioned, would be obviously equitable funding across the board. I just think that obviously our students of color have not been given the same equitable funding as all other school districts across our state, and I think that needs to change. And then obviously the focus on academics for everyone, for every student to have a quality education and be afforded the opportunity to go to college. Those would be my 3 issues that I would address.
Awesome. Gun control, that's my first thing. As I stated before, I deal with those things on a daily, so I definitely am for stricter gun control laws. Secondly is funding, and third, mental health. I deal with students all the time where you have to deal with them from a particular angle in a particular way, and we're right next door, well, around the corner from one of the mental hospitals, and it saddens my heart that the children don't understand it, the parents don't understand it, and I also want to make sure that the parents are being held accountable for getting their children the help that they need, because you send them to school and they're acting out and we're trying to deal with them as much as we can deal with them, and the parents have no accountability to making sure that their kids take the medicine, get what they need. So those are things that's important to me.
How are our schools addressing many of our students with the number of shootings that we've had on the streets of Chicago? There was 200 within the last several weeks. They're not being shot in school, they're shot en route to school, going back home from school. What kind of mental health programs do you now have that, or how have they been cut? The dollars, I know we used to have a crisis program at CPS. The dollars for that have been cut tremendously. So what is it that we really need to provide a high-quality public education? Dr. Kenner, you're a tennis, or used to be a tennis player.
40 years.
40 years of tennis, and most of our schools don't teach gym. I mean, they don't have sports as we used to. So what are the cuts that you have had to endure in programs, art, music, and how has that impacted the provision of a high-quality education to our children?
I think as a principal, I prioritize what was important to our school, and so I tried not to cut any area where that is going to grossly impact students. And so at Whitney Young, we were really not impacted that much because my husband is an accountant. I'm very frugal about how we spend dollars, and so I was able to balance our budget to make sure that we have a social worker, to make sure that we have a school psychologist, to make sure that we have all of the activities that really makes for a well-rounded student. My background is physical education. I was a college cheerleader. I believe in the connection between sports and academics to make a well-rounded child. And so I'm sure of those students out there who follow sports, I want to be good at everything. We want to be good at everything. But more importantly, I want our students to have access to every single sport and every single activity that they want to be involved with. And so I think that principals can find the dollars. They can go out and look for partnerships as we have done. And there's a lot of people out there who are willing to give monies to schools if you just ask. And a lot of times we don't ask, and so we don't get the dollars from those private donors who are willing to give us dollars. Just a point of clarity. We had a fundraiser last year. True story. We walked into a real estate agency and we introduced ourselves. We said we were having a fundraiser. The guy wrote us a check for $50,000 on the spot. And so again, if you don't ask, you don't get.
And I will just say from the district perspective, part of what we do is we prioritize, and the priorities are always students first. So there is no way that we will cut any kind of a program for our young people, because that ultimately is why some of our young people come to school. For some of our young people, it is an opportunity for them to participate in something that is bigger and greater than what happens at home. When we have our funding from the state, our priorities are academics, student extracurricular activities, making sure that we have guidance counselors, that we have social workers, psychologists, that we have enough teachers, maintaining our class sizes, making sure that, and especially at this level, that class sizes are small. So we haven't really had to cut much. We just shift. We shift to what I call the top, which is our children. So that's what
just before Reverend Jackson joins us, we have one of the great young singers that's going to also join us. I have one final question. We're all going on an HBCU college tour. What do you think the value for students to visit or attend, enroll in an HBCU, how do you think that will impact them going forward? Some of us send our children to HBCUs. I'm going to start with you, Erica, and come back around.
I went on several college tours when I was in high school because my mother wanted to make sure I was exposed to everything. One thing that I would say is be present to the experience. Be open, be alert, be aware, and just take in the opportunity that you have been afforded, what most young people have not had the opportunity to be afforded. Also, I hope that you guys have brought some unofficial transcripts, because I was one who, when I went to certain college tours or when they visited my school and I had my unofficial transcript, I got some scholarships on the spot. So I hope that you've come prepared and be open to all the possibilities of what this world can offer you. So bring in all your black girl magic, bring in all your black boy joy, and be prepared for everything that this is going to bring you.
My son, my only biological son, is a proud graduate of Jackson State. And I honestly believe for a black boy, he needed that experience and that type of guidance and love that they gave my son. I'll also tell you a quick story. I also sent my niece to Hampton University. Her grades were horrible. Her test scores were horrible. She called me and said, Joyce, this is where I want to go to school. And so, will you send me down to Hampton for a high school day? I said, sure. My niece walked into that dean's office, told them of her story. They admitted my niece on the spot, and she's a proud graduate of Hampton University.
That's what I'm talking about.
I will just reiterate the fact that this is exposure. It's exposure to what can be possible for you. And the one thing about HBCUs is they will wrap their arms around you, because more than anything, they want you to be an alumni and to be successful. And so when you get at an HBCU, unlike our predominantly white colleges and universities, they will know your name. They will know your family, they will know all your story, and they will provide you exactly what you need to be successful. So this particular exposure, I encourage you. I'm the proud daughter. Both my parents were HBCU grads for generations in my family, and I encourage you to embrace this experience because it can really be life-changing.
Give a big hand for our panel. We want to make education is bedroom up, not classroom down. Bedroom up, not classroom down. Any parent is rich enough to dream. Say, parents who without money can have rich spirits and rich dreams and teach their children to dream. We want parents to do this. Number one, take your child to school. Don't send, take. Number two, meet your child's teachers. Number three, exchange home numbers. Number four, turn the television off. 3 hours a night. Number five, pick up your child's report card. Number six, take your child to church, a temple, a synagogue once a week. Put your hands together. Don't show up at graduation time raising hell. Show up in September being humble. Say don't show up at graduation time raising hell. Show up in September with a plan to co-partner with teachers to make it happen. Next week, we'll be celebrating, the week after next, Dr. King's assassination date. There are many things that we are celebrating about Dr. King's life. One of them is that he marched and all. Dr. King finished high school at age 15. Serious. He finished college Morehouse at 19. He got his seminary degree at 22 and PhD at 26. So Dr. King had a strong mind. Strong minds break strong chains. Strong minds break strong chains. When this tour takes place every year, I never used to be amazed, parents. A number of our youth who come on this tour from Chicago at age 18 have never seen Lake Michigan. Never been to the Museum of Science and Industry or to the various exhibits in Chicago. So take your children to the museum. Take your children to the planetarium, to the aquarium. Expose them, share with them. One very special daughter we have, little sister Maya Carter, is a very special, gifted child. She is not. Maya, where are you in school, Maya?
Interlochen Fine Arts Academy, located in Interlochen, Michigan.
Give her a hand. Play something for us, Maya.
Sooner we'll be done. Troubles of the world, troubles of the world, troubles of the world. Sooner we'll be done. Troubles of the world, we need the hands of God. I want to see my Jesus. I want to see my Jesus. I want to see my Jesus. We need the hands of God. Sooner we'll be done. Troubles of the world, troubles of the world, troubles of the world. Sooner we'll be done. Troubles of the world, we Troubles of the world, troubles of the world, sooner will be done. Troubles of the world, oh, we need the hands of God.
Give him a big hand. Put your hands together. Put your hands together. Never teach down to our children. She comes from a single family, and all that goes with that. She said we must never teach down to our children. I should never forget when we were in the 6th grade and Mrs. Shelton said to us that she began to teach us what we call big words. She called policy laboratory. She said, I promise you, I will never teach down to one of you little brats might run for president or governor. I don't want to be embarrassed. Say, teachers must never underestimate the special genius of our children. Give Maya another big hand. I want Jeanette to talk a bit about, before we go off there, about the tour our youth are taking today on this trip around the South. But also June 13th through 16th is our annual convention. June 13th through 16th, the Rainbow Push International Convention, June 13th through 16th. This year, there are 4 million blacks in the South unregistered. If we register half of them, we'll take the South back and take the country back. 2.5 million blacks were registered who did not vote. Say, if we vote, good things come our way. When we vote, we win Alabama and Virginia. Good things come our way. We vote, we get Obama. We don't vote, we get Trump. Put your hands together, that makes sense to you. Also, June 13th through 16th, April 4th is the Dr. King Assassination Commemoration Date. We'll be having a very special service here on that occasion. Members will be in Memphis, but around the world we'll celebrate and commemorate his life and his living. I want to thank you for being here. I want all of you who are here today to join Rainbow. Don't like kids, look, just stand up again, kids, stand up again. Come back on the stage. They're on the way to college. On the way to college. Give them a big hand. They're on the way to college. Gurnell Sims. Happy birthday, Gurnell. Gurnell Sims, 200 years old. Give Gurnell a big hand. Where's Mayhan?
We also want to welcome, we have a group of students from Metra Family Services, Upward Bound. Would you stand and be recognized? Thank you so much for coming out and joining us at the Saturday Morning Forum. Let's give it up for our students from Metra Family Services.
They are also joining us going to Alabama on an HBCU tour. So that's a whole nother bus that's leaving from Rainbow Push today.
Yeah, come on down here then.
Come on up here, Metro.
Come on, Metro.
Metro.
Say, we shall overcome.
We got John Grimmer from Walgreens. Thank you so much.
If you're not a member of Rainbow Push, you want to help us today.
I think we got to.
It costs about $1,500 a student to send these kids to college on this tour. We work very diligently to subsidize the tour that they might be able to go. If they do the right thing, we must do the right thing. If you'll sacrifice today and you'll help us help our children, you'll sacrifice. If this program is inspiring you, you'll give at least a $100 stand. You'll sacrifice and give $100 once you stand. You'll sacrifice and give $100 to Rainbow Push.
Reverend, before we go into our offering, as you told us, we want to make sure that we just talk about our scholarship program and how people can support the scholarship program and how corporations like Walgreens and White Castle continue to support our HBCU tour. McDonald's and so many other companies have helped us.
Give a big hand for Jonathan Jackson, our national spokesman. Send up, Jonathan. Dr. Jackie Jackson, will you stand? Give her a big hand. You'll give at least $100. Please stand, whoever you are. Thank you. We need your support, even to subsidize this trip. If you don't have it, we have one of those slicer machines here. You'll give at least $50. Please stand. Stand now. In TV land, www.raymondbush.org. So www.raymondbush.org. Come right now with your donations. Come right now. Thank you, Mr. Jonathan. Jonathan is bringing some money. It must be a cold day in Hades. Thank you so much. Hit it, Mahan. We shall overcome. Mahan, hit it.
Well, deep in my heart, oh, I do believe that we shall overcome someday.
Everybody sing.
Hey, we shall overcome.
Put your hands together.
Somebody sing, we shall. Let it ring out that we shall. Oh, someday. Well, deep in my heart, oh, I believe that we shall overcome someday. Come on, sing it with us.
You're not yet given,
please stand. We shall.
If you're not
Somebody
yet given, please
sing,
stand.
we shall.
Parents,
let it ring out that we shall overcome someday.
Hey, Miss Hannah.
Well, deep in my heart, oh, I believe it, we shall overcome, yeah, someday. Yeah, we'll walk hand in hand. Yeah, we'll walk hand in hand. Yeah, we'll walk hand in hand. Someday.
Sing.
Well, deep in my heart, oh, I still believe we'll walk hand in hand someday.
We're not afraid.
Oh, we are not afraid.
We're not afraid.
No, we are not afraid. We are not afraid.
Thank you, Dr.
Today.
Thank you,
oh, deep, I know it is, it's weary, but I still believe that we're not afraid today. No, we shall.
Our children are want to pray for them today. They're about to leave and go on this trip across Alabama and Mississippi and Georgia and South. We ask God for traveling mercies and grace for them today. Again, we thank God for Sister Rhonda Lewis, the wife of Brother Tommy Lewis, who made a transition this week in Birmingham, Alabama. We pray for that family, and the funeral service will be this coming Friday in Birmingham, Alabama. If you've not yet given, please stand. Give as you have been blessed to give. We need your support. Don't forget, June 13th through 16th is our convention. Let all of us stand. We shall overcome.
Deep my heart, oh, we shall overcome someday.
Sing, kids.
We sing it out loud. Come on. We shall. We work everything we shall overcome someday. Yeah, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday. Oh, we shall overcome.
Everybody.
Oh, we shall overcome. Let it ring out that we shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I know it gets hard, but I still believe that we shall overcome someday.
Remember, parents, as you pray for your children's safety this week, children remember more where you took them than what you bought them. Children remember more. To children, remember more where you took them than what you bought them. Bring them to a picket line. Bring them to the museum, to the aquarium, science industry. Bring them, love them, embrace them, hug them. These are our children. God gave them to us. We must not let the streets take them from us. You know what I want you to do, Mr. Mahan? Do a little amen. I want y'all sing like y'all mean it. Y'all know amen. Come on. Amen. Put your hands together.
Amen. Amen. Everybody sing.
Everybody.
Oh, amen. 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 Sing it. Oh, amen. Amen. Listen now, this.
Okay, we're going to take a quick picture with all of our chaperones. If you could please come quickly. And the chaperones from our power group, if you could please come and join us on stage quickly. Thank you all so very much. We'll see you next Saturday. Pray for our children and our staff as they go down on our HBCU tour. Thank you.
Parents, don't leave the auditorium. Just remain. If you want to see us, get on the bus. John Grimmer, come take a picture with us. Any of our sponsors that are here?
How you doing?